the relationship between the ambassador and the U.S. Commission are very significant. And Ambassador Brownback, through his leadership, through his history, I think was to be a very good ambassador. And he just started. He gave his first speech last week, and I have to tell you, unfortunately, and we can't blame him. He was a few days on the job, but his first photo op was embracing Shaikh Bin Bayyah. And I've talked to you about Shaikh Bin Bayyah before. This guy was heralded as the moderate imam, as the imam brought in by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, by all of the anti-terror, anti-Al-Qaeda folks, that somehow this guy was going to lead. He led this Amman Declaration, which we can talk about later if you wish, but bottom line is, yes, there's a lot of platitudes, certainly he's much closer to the center than the militants, the Islamists, violent terrorists. But Shaikh Bin Bayyah comes from Mauritania. We had released a press release about him back in 2013, and Senator Brownback this week decided, right after he got sworn in his official speech, first official speech as ambassador, as PJ Media reported, he embraced a hardline, what they call a hardline cleric. Now, I think his ideas are pretty radical. I think he's clearly an Islamist. He is no friend of the United States. And he's an ideological antagonist based upon his Islamist proclivities. And I guess that would make him hardline. But his words, his condemnations of terrorists, etc., make it a little difficult to just call him hardline. I think we have to educate Americans and educate Governor Brownback, our ambassador on religious freedom, that this is no guy, this is no man, no cleric that we should be embracing, and that the holdovers of relationships from the State Department of the Obama administration should be reset, should not just be continued carte blanche. And, all it would have needed was a Google search. All he could have, if you Google Shaikh Bin Bayyah, Bayyah, Shaikh Bin Bayyah, America, democracy, religious freedom, and you will find one of them is our press release that we released back in 2013 at the dismay when Bin Bayyah was invited into the White House, when then the media reaction happened and the Obama administration went into overdrive to try to rehabilitate the Sheikh's image. And the bottom line is that the interactions with Bin Bayyah have continued. Why? Because the CVE program, and you and I have talked about how the central pin of reform will have to come from the shift of CVE to CVI, because CVE is all about countering violent extremism. And if all you're talking about is extremism, the Bin Bayyahs of the world are natural allies because they condemn Al-Qaeda. They say they don't have a moral authority. They wear the long beards, the long robes, and they come and give you quotations from Hadith and from Quran and have this authority that this is not Islam and that we will take back the mantle of Islam to the mantle of the religion of peace. But the Shaikh Bin Bayyahs of the world are not moderate reformers. They are not those who are going to reform the ideas of Islamism. Long before the militancy, the precursor supremacism of Islamism is about Caliphism. The precursor supremacism of Islamism is about Islamic collectivism, is about anti-Islamism. That should be our policies. Anti-Islamism is how we determine who our friends are, but unfortunately the Islamists are about creating Islamic State identities where Muslims are a majority. It's about creating a Sharia state, putting into place Sharia law. And I'm not just making this stuff up. Let's look at what Bin Bayyah has said. He said in a 2004 fatwa, he authorized the killing of Americans in Iraq and endorsed the Iraqi resistance. Oh, I guess he couldn't even use his 70-plus-year-old brain at the time to balance what was the condition of the Iraqis under Saddam Hussein, one of the most ruthless dictators of the 20th century. that now they needed a resistance to put back into place Saddam Hussein. The 2004 fatwa was issued by the International Union of Muslim Scholars. Bin Bayyah was serving as its vice president. And by the way, who is one of Bin Bayyah's closest allies? A man who was prohibited from coming to the United States. Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, one of the leading ideological spiritual leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. Qaradawi has a show on Al Jazeera that's followed by 60 million plus every week called Sharia and Life. Qaradawi's website, followed by millions upon millions, is basically one of the central points of access of the global cancer of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology and global Islamism. So to say that the Holocaust-denying, conspiratorial thinking Qaradawi and his sidekick, who's of basically the same age, Bin Bayyah, is somehow a moral guy who's from Mauritania and very different than the Egyptian cleric Yusuf Qaradawi, who they sit together in Qatar all the time, and they sat together in this International Union of Muslim Scholars and came up with their fatwa about America being the enemy in 2004. And then even when we raised this, and it was raised by multiple media in 2014 to the Obama administration, they then thought a response of a simple link of a quote from Bin Bayyah rejecting Al-Qaeda was enough. And it wasn't. Then they deleted that tweet and apologized for promoting his work. They apologized. The State Department apologized for promoting Bin Bayyah and said that the White House meeting should not have happened. That's the Obama administration. And now the swamp in the State Department decides that the new ambassador for religious freedom, Governor Brownback, would be served by beginning his tenure embracing Bin Bayyah. Ambassador Brownback, if you're listening, please contact Muslim reformers. Reach out to the Muslim reform movement. We will help you discern who to speak to and who not to. We will help you discern. Now, again, this is not about left or right. We'll give you liberals, we'll give you conservatives, we'll give you those who share our values, and those who may be of any political stripe. But they need to share our universal values and human rights. They need to reject Islamism. They need to reject Califism. They need to reject Hamas. They need to believe that the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist, something that Bin Bayyah has spoken out against. The International Union of Muslim Scholars in February 2012 met a senior Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh. He was welcomed as a new member. And yet Trump State Department designated Haniyeh a global terrorist just last week. So the left hand doesn't know that the right hand's still sunken in the swamp. And I'm talking about the global swamp. And this is one of the problems, is that President Trump ran on somebody who was going to drain the swamp. But yet globally, when he's embracing and building new counter-terror centers in Riyadh and elsewhere, and where Secretary Tillerson is talking about working with Qatar, and we don't see a walling off of Qatar like should happen because of their deep connections to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, you worry that the global swamp still has significant influence.